my name is Bridget. I am on the negative side of this argument. I'm going to be reinforcing Timmy's claims that prostitution should be illegal. I'll be covering 3 key points as evidence to support her argument. Legalizing and decriminalizing prostitution does not decrease the amount of human trafficking in that given area. Legalizing prostitution does not strengthen control over the trade, it only expands it. And making prostitution legal will not make the industry safer for those working in prostitution in regards to both health and safety. So the first point being that legalizing and decriminalizing prostitution does not decrease the amount of human trafficking in that given area. Netherlands was one of the first countries to legalize prostitution. 80% of the women in brothels in Netherlands were trafficked from other countries. One of the most notable countries for legalizing prostitution, the majority of participants are there illegally. And they have been victims of human trafficking. The Amsterdam-based Child Right Organization estimates that the number of children in prostitution has increased by more than 300% since legalized. Child Right estimates that at least 5,000 of these children in Dutch prostitution have been trafficked from other countries, with a large segment being from Nigeria. As a significant amount of the participants of the industry are underage girls who are victims of human trafficking, the legalization of prostitution does not help regulate the world of human trafficking, but rather encourages its expansion by providing more bodies. The Harvard School of Law has studied and said that countries with legalized prostitution are associated with higher human trafficking inflows than countries where prostitution is prohibited. The scale effect of legalizing prostitution, i.e. expansion of the market, outweighs the substitution effect where legal sex workers are favored over illegal sex workers. On average, countries with legalized prostitution report a greater incidence of human trafficking inflows. Keeping prostitution illegal will not end human trafficking, but it does create less of a market for sex workers. By legalizing the trade and encouraging participation from not only sex workers but also the Johns, increases the demand for bodies. In this trade, if the resort is to illegally acquire sex workers, it will be done and human trafficking will increase. On to my second point, legalizing prostitution does not strengthen control over the trade, it just expands it. Contrary to claims that legalization and decriminalization would control the expansion of the sex industry, according to Daily, prostitution now accounts for 5% of the Netherlands economy, and over the last decade, after brothels were decriminalized in the year 2000, the sex industry increased by 25% in Netherlands. The legalization of prostitution will only encourage the expansion of the industry. It doesn't exclusively regulate an already existing illegal trade, but rather now gives legal pimps the opportunity to bring more women into the trade legally. In New Zealand, where prostitution was decriminalized in 2003, there was a young woman who used to be in the business who interviewed girls who are currently prostitutes. She said, "Young women in brothels have told me that men now demand more than ever for less than ever. And because the trade is socially sanctioned, there is no incentive for the government to provide exit strategies for those who want to get out of it." The argument that the government could utilize revenue made from legalizing the prostitution trade to create more social programs to keep women out of prostitution is false. The government won't provide programs to deter women from entering a trade that they will be profiting from. Sex work will not be discouraged, and women in the industry will not be given other opportunities through government expense. The legalizing or decriminalizing of prostitution in Netherlands and Spain has backfired, proving a disaster for exploited persons and creating new victims. Sex tourists have flocked to the Netherlands, turning brothels there into a powerful industry that faces very minuscule regulation. The assumption that legalization and regulation of prostitution will give the government more control is inaccurate. It only gives pimps and sex businessmen, what they would be called, more legal coverage to place more control over the women involved. On to my third and final point. Making prostitution legal will not make the industry safer for those working in prostitution in both regards to health and safety. One of the goals claimed by Dr. Janice Raymond says that legalized prostitution was to move prostituted women indoors into brothels and clubs where they would be allegedly less vulnerable than in street prostitution. However, many women are in street prostitution because they want to avoid being controlled and exploited by the pimps. Legalizing brothels will not allow sex workers to be safer through independent contracting, as Trey stated. Brothels, even legal, will still be managed and financially observed by sex businessmen. These women will still not be able to determine what services they are willing to provide, nor will they have full control to deny services or situations that make them feel unsafe. A legalized system of prostitution often mandates health checks and certifications, this is true, but only for women and not for the male buyers. Health examinations or tests for women, but not men, make no public health sense because monitoring prostituted women does not protect them from HIV, AIDS, or STDs, as claimed by Dr. Janice Raymond. Male buyers can and do originally transmit disease to the women that they purchase. This framework assumes that the sex workers are the only ones spreading sexually transmitted diseases. In order to adequately and properly control the transmittance of STDs in the trade, it's necessary to keep track of both parties and require both to undergo health examinations. It has been argued that legalized brothels or other controlled prostitution establishments protect women through enforceable condom policies. In one study, 47% of women in U.S. prostitution stated that men expected sex without a condom, 73% reported that men offered to pay more for sex without a condom, and 45% of women said that men become abusive or have become abusive if they insisted that men use condoms. Safe sex work practices are only efficient in theory. The amount of compensation for services is king, and if women are afraid for their lives, they must subject themselves to unprotected sex. Oftentimes, nobody else is in the room to guarantee that they won't be facing the obligation to have sex without a condom. The Johns paying for their service are the only participant with control, even in safe sex work practices being supposedly regulated. I'd also like to make a point about Jacob's argument that an officer bribed a prostitute before arresting her for solicitation. How are you expected to uphold a legal system for prostitution if the people who are entitled to hold up the legal system can't follow through? All right. With that, in conclusion, I would like to state that prostitution should remain illegal because it doesn't benefit those involved in the trade, nor will it benefit